Today I want to go through some of the tried and true tactics that the media and our government continually use against people in Canada when they try to come together to fight for their rights. The United We Roll Convoy, or the Convoy for Canada, has just left Parliament Hill in Ottawa after trying to get the attention of government and demand that they develop the oil and gas industry and stop letting it languish. People need jobs, towns, communities are dying, and the United We Roll protest convoy was all about that. The Yellow Vest movement also joined in, and it was there was a little bit of a clash, but the organizer of the United We Roll convoy, Glenn Carrott, said everybody is welcome as long as they're not radical. It was a successful protest. It lasted 2 days. The leader, Andrew Scheer, and the leader, Maxime Bernier, came out and gave speeches, and it was all good. So the media, in spite of its attempts to derail this process starting back in January, they've failed.
The most important is these people are hard-working Canadians, and they came here because they care about this country. So that's the most important for me.
I really think it's worthwhile going over the lame attempts that the media and politicians always use to shut the people down. And what disappoints me is that it works every time. These are simple, basic bully tactics. They're very transparent, and I wish Canadians would stop falling for them. So the first one is the simple smear tactic, guilt by association, or as it's known, poisoning the well. Poisoning the well is a smear tactic. It's a rhetorical technique and a logical fallacy that uses the association of negative emotions to distract a subject from actual evidence in an argument. Poisoning the well is an appeal to hate. The usual method is to point out the unpleasant nature of the person making the opposing argument, in which case it is a special case of a personal attack or an ad hominem. In general, to poison the well means to pre-provide information that could produce a biased opinion of the reasoning, either to the positive or negative. You get the idea. And the CBC and the rest of the mainstream media in Canada, as well as politicians and outspoken loudmouths like Gail Vaz-Oxlade, for example.
Thank you, Gail.
They do it all the time. This is their primary go-to method of trying to keep Canadians from speaking truth to power, and definitely to try to keep us from coming together. CBC News, our state broadcaster. A convoy of angry Albertans and other Westerners rolls into Ottawa today for a mass protest against federal energy and environmental policies that has also become a magnet for extremist anti-immigrant elements. See all those emotional words? Do you see how they are poisoning the well and appealing to hate? We have angry, we have extremist, anti-immigrant, and when they say elements, it's like a seedy underbelly connotation. It paints everybody as if like there's these lurking, secret, bad people. So that was disappointing. And it's even more disappointing when someone calls it out, like this guy did, speaking right to CBC News and various politicians, and he says, will the leaders of the Alberta political parties please file a complaint to CBC over this, over being labeled? And they're labeling, defaming a whole group of people that are just standing up for their rights. I didn't see whether any politicians answered, but one of the CBC journalists did, this guy, and he said, I read it and it was a fair representation of the story. Sorry to disappoint you. So he's going to stick with the elitist poisoning the well tactic against his fellow Canadians because he's a member of the press and that's what they do. But it's not just them. There's politicians that do it too. Federal MP Nikki Aston. Hate has no place on or inside Parliament Hill. True leaders understand that you don't pal around with white nationalists. Like, what is that, Nikki? She's calling everybody in the protest a white nationalist. And she's using the guilt by association tactic there by putting a photo of Conservative Party leader Andrew Scheer there. It's so dirty. But what's more sickening to me is that regular Canadians buy it and the press parrots it. Now, this next thing isn't about the convoy, but it's another way they stick together to protect their own. The elites will circle their wagons, and they will use these base-level bully tactics against us. Now, it's the same thing. If you have an abusive parent and a whole bunch of kids in the family, and one of the kids wants to tell, but usually, surprisingly, many times the rest of the kids will be angry at the truth teller, right? Well, we have a similar situation, in my opinion, here. A journalist went to knock on the door of Jerry Butts. I won't go into the whole story here. And he did, and he asked a couple of polite questions. When it was obvious that the wife didn't want to talk, he left. But that didn't stop politicians in the press from dogpiling a fellow journalist for his audacity to go and knock on the private home door of a politician. I might feel the same if that politician would ever appear and answer questions for his role. Well, he's actually a bureaucrat. He's not a politician. But he has, on his own private writings, or it's public writings, in his public writings, that bureaucrat has slandered Canadians many, many times. And the best thing, in my opinion, other politicians and the press could do is just keep their mouths shut when someone goes to them to get answers. The fact that they are making a point of scolding that one reporter who had the balls to do that tells me a lot. It tells me that we're all in this together. Don't make our fellow elite buddies uncomfortable. And Jason Kenney there, who made this tweet, scolding, calling this reporter deplorable, Jason Kenney, it's because he's a politician too, and he would never want that to happen to him. He is training the press, you see? And he's training the public at the same time. And of course, underneath his tweets, even people from the liberal side, oh, I agree with you on this, Jason Kenney. How nice to find common ground. We're all the same. We all hate people who try to get accountability from their politicians. All right, what's next here? The Globe and Mail, who normally stays away from name-calling as far as I'm concerned, they just had to get their kicks in too. They had to shiv the United We Roll protesters by saying it was almost a perfect protest, but there was infiltration of white nationalists who used it to protest the UN Global Compact, immigration, and racist causes. Show me these white nationalists. Nobody has shown me them. Let me hear what they had to say so that I can know that they're white nationalists and you're not just lying, because the press lies all the time. We know it does. And B, do you see they did exactly what I said in the beginning? They were really just worried about having people ask about the UN Global Migration Compact and immigration. They don't want anyone talking about that. So they are saying that the only people who want to know about that are white nationalists. It's so disgusting and it's so transparent. I'm sorry, getting angry. I mean, for example, the mainstream media did not cover this. Here's a yellow vester. I don't think he's racist. He's an immigrant. He works in oil and gas. He was both. He was United We Roll and Yellow Vests. And everything I have seen from all of the protesters, all of the pro-pipeline and Yellow Vest protesters, has been a very peaceful, uniting message. They sung songs. They talked about all of us being in this together. They were so proud of themselves to organize this grassroots movement from coast to coast. It is no easy feat in this country. And the press doesn't like to see it. So they're not going to cover those things. They're just going to make allegations and allusions like this. And like this. And so many more. Albertan pro-pipeline convoy needs to stay on message. Oh, whatever could that be? The idea of pipelines and the energy sector are good topics to get people engaged. The problem comes when some of the other elements to these protests, especially with the Yellow Vest movement, getting involved. You see? Division. They want you divided. Oh yes, this is the next phase in what they're going to do to smear the movement. United We Roll convoy organizer denies allegations he ran off with the GoFundMe cash. You see, their claims of racism and white nationalism and extremism did not pan out. They didn't get a single soundbite about that from the protest, and now the protesters are rolling back home off Parliament Hill and back to their lives. So what they're doing now is they're causing division. They're casting aspersions on the good name of the man who organized the GoFundMe page. The GoFundMe was a fundraiser to try and help everybody afford the gas money that it was going to cost, and maybe hotels and food. I'm not quite sure. And in the early days of the planning of this event, Glenn Carrott was the guy designated, or who took it upon himself to make the GoFundMe for the United We Roll protests. At the same time, but not connected to Glenn Carrott, was a guy called CJ Clayton, and he started Yellow Vests Ottawa. And he said, I'm going to give some of my GoFundMe money. He opened a GoFundMe, and he said he's going to give some of that money to Glenn Carrott and the United We Roll protesters, which he did, $38,000. So that all happened last month. And at the time, there was a little bit of a flurry of activity online about maybe something going wrong with the funding and an infighting between the two groups, and people were dropping out. So you can see right there, something was inserted at that point that caused some trouble in organizing the movement. But the United We Roll people, they rolled on. They managed to do it. They ignored that divisive tactic and they kept going. But today, now that the protest has been a success, they're dredging this story back up. And now they're saying that the organizer of the United We Roll protest might have taken some money for himself, or hasn't handed it all out. The thing about this, once again, we have the press failing to explore the background of the people making the accusations. Just like yesterday with the Satinder Dillon story I brought you, this is another exact example. And it makes me wonder if one of the players in this drama isn't an agent provocateur. I don't know. I'm not making the allegation, but let me tell you the story and you decide if this is organic or not. I'm sorry if there's a buzz. My fan is going crazy. So the press is going crazy with this story. A few of these are about the supposed GoFundMe problems. This city story here is about the misuse of oil convoy funds. They're really trying to make it look like Glenn Carrott is a shady character. But the press is doing with this story the same thing it did with the Satinder Dillon story about suing Maxime Bernier for copyright infringement. They're doing the same thing here again. So people have to be really wary of this. When you read the story, I'll start with the one from the Toronto Star. You notice here that they say, CJ Clayton, a Kelowna man, started an earlier GoFundMe page and now alleges that Carrott owes him money. When they talk about Carrott, they tell you who he is. Carrott, who is a business owner of OP Fire, an oil and gas company, and a town councillor in Innisfil, Alberta. They tell you who he is. We can check who he is. Plus, he's the guy on the news all the time talking about the convoy. He's guaranteed a real person. On the other hand, the Star doesn't want to tell you anything about CJ Clayton. They have a little backup character for CJ here, Peggy Lee Glenn, another organizer of the Yellow Vest Convoy, and they don't tell you anything about her either. And they're not the only ones. The Calgary Herald did a story, and they talk about the same accusations against Glenn Carrott, CJ Clayton, founder of the Yellow Vest Convoy to Ottawa group. That's it. No background on him, no photo, nothing. We don't know who he is. Even look at the difference. You see, there's nothing about this Peggy Lee Glenn as the supporting character, but on Carrott's side, on the people being accused side, Wade Wovichka, who also participated in the United We Roll protest, look, they even give details about him. He participated with the financial help of his employer, Alberta-based NTREC, and sure enough, if you Google this guy's name with that company, it comes up. When you Google CJ Clayton or that other woman, you don't get anything. And the Facebook page is closed, and the GoFundMe that they started is closed. So I said, all right, this looks like another case of having to dig up why the paper won't tell us who these accusers are. They never want to tell you the background of the people making the claims, just like they never want to show you anybody saying anything that would qualify them as being racist or white nationalist. It's all just smear jobs. But I looked into CJ Clayton, and I was going to go into a deep explanation of his background, but I'll leave links in the description box. This guy is a serial scammer. His name is Chris J. Clayton. He is from BC. He's featured on two different, I think it was Global News and CTV News, stories about this Facebook group that he started where it was like a buyer's club, and they ripped everybody off. Here, look, this is really short.
They flat out refuse to provide any information on where my money has gone.
We tracked down the operators of the company.
Hi, how you
Hi
doing?
there. Great, thanks. Want to speak to Chris?
Yeah.
I'm Kent, work for CTV.
Chris Clayton says they started racking up unexpected costs they couldn't pay, and the whole business is failing.
It's been brutal, and
But he promises everyone will get their money back.
I issued more refunds last night out of our own personal bank account.
Out money. Hi there, so I just got my unique kit in the mail today.
The founder of the co-op site is Priscilla Clayton of Vernon, seen here promoting a makeup kit. She wasn't available for an interview, but we spoke to her husband, Chris Clayton, over the phone, who says everyone who is owed money will be repaid.
And nobody was defrauded, and we're trying to get this straightened out.
Okay, I just cut out the pertinent parts there so that you could see his face. That is him. That's CJ Clayton. Here's his IMDb page, where you can look up some of these details maybe about him. I'll notice that he works with the BC Film Tax Credit Program and the CRA, Canada Revenue Agency. So he's familiar to them, and he supposedly gets locations for films out in BC. So he's in the entertainment industry. And he's been known for ripping people off. Not just those times. There's this board legal junkies here. They go into some more details, that he's had other businesses which ended up being scams and multi-level marketing as well. So you see my point? The Toronto Star, the Calgary Herald, who knows what other publications, are running with these accusations made against the United We Roll convoy as if they're credible. When I'd say half an hour it took for me to make sure that that's the same guy. That is definitely the same guy. CJ Clayton is Chris J. Clayton. They are the same. It is him. If the media and the journalists were worth their salt, they would have said, I don't think we want to take your accusations against this United We Roll convoy leader seriously. We can't take you seriously. You have a sketchy past. And you've closed your Facebook page, you've closed your GoFundMe page, you have no credibility, zero credibility. So what's the media up to? Are they part of an effort to smear any protests that go against the government or not? Because that's what it looks like. In this whole video, I haven't been able to show you any evidence of people being racists because the media hasn't provided any. That's why I can't. You'd think for all their accusations and allegations, they would be able to show evidence. And I've been able to debunk this claim that this CJ Clayton person is at all credible to try and damage the reputation of the good name of Glenn Carrott, who organized the United We Roll protests. I've debunked that. I am tired of having to run around after the mainstream media and clean up their messes. Because from where I'm sitting, they are nothing but elitist little punks who are lazy and bullies. They're bullies. They also have their noses up the behinds of the government and the business class. So who's really the problem in this country? Phantom white supremacists? Regular Canadians who want jobs? Regular Canadians who don't want open borders? Regular Canadians who have a problem signing off their sovereignty to the United Nations? Are they the problem, really? Are you really falling for this? Canada? Get on board with the populist movement. Don't fall for their poisoning the well. Don't fall for their agents provocateurs. Take 2 minutes and look at the other side of every story that comes out. I'm happy to bring them to you, but I'm very disturbed that the media in Canada just got $600 million from the government. And here I am doing this for free. It is my full-time job. It is my full-time job. The only reason that I do it is because I want to put in the last-ditch effort that I can to try and turn this country around. I'm very, very worried for our future here. My daughter is 25 years old. I wanted this world to be what it was when I was 25 years old. And I'm very disappointed that things are how they are. I'm very concerned that she's going to live through what should be the best years of her life in a very dark sociological and economic climate. I don't want any more vilifying of regular Canadians for standing up for their nation and their people. We are all one people. I stand with the First Nations people. I stand with all the legal immigrants to Canada. I stand with all non-criminals. I stand with all taxpayers. I stand with the disabled. I stand with LGBTQ. I stand with everybody who wants freedom. And I am tired of the press making it so hard for good people to get along. I'm going to stop talking now. Sorry if I got a little shrill. Thanks for listening. If you could leave a thumbs up and a comment, I would really like to hear your comments about this. Especially if you have anything to tell me or share with me about the convoy. I would like to put together a montage about that, maybe. If people can send me video moments or like links to videos, that would be great. Until next time, peace out.